Why single-family investments can work for everyone? Well, in my opinion, I say that the pros definitely outweigh the cons, but you know the old saying goes for opinions, right? They're like elbows and uh-ohs. Everybody's got them. But, you know, for me, it definitely outweighs the cons. The good outweighs the bad in this. So let's take a look at that. I mentioned briefly in the previous video about the stackable returns. And to me, those are the biggest advantages to real estate. You've got cash flow, you've got principal pay down in a leveraged scenario, you've got appreciation and depreciation. Those four things together, I call the stackable returns. Those are massive pros to single family residential investments. And beyond that, the entry level is massive. The entry level is a massive advantage as well too. So if you think about it, it takes less capital to get into the game. If I'm looking at a mixed-use commercial or multifamily, that's a lot more money to get into the game. Now, in the right markets, you could be into a rental for under 100K. That's purchase, renovation, and everything. Some rentals, you know, we'll typically cap out around the 150 mark on that, but there's less capital required. Also, there's less experience required as well too. If you think about it, to get into the residential world, most of us live in a house, right? Most of us have the ability of acquiring a house, purchasing a house, where if you think of the other side, the commercial side, it's a big difference. We don't have that experience or the community yet around us to leverage the experience to acquire a 40 unit, to acquire a mixed-use commercial, right? There's a different level of experience. That experience is also required when you're funding or financing a deal too. You'll need previous experience to get the funding. So that's the difference between residential. There are more available options as well. And when I say options, they're just units to choose from, houses to choose from. So again, take a look at the market and look at the opportunity to purchase an 80 unit, 40 unit, 20 unit, mixed use commercial. And then look at how many single family residential houses there are available. Those houses are actually going to be easier to find too. So it's going to be easier to find. There's more of them and they're easier to find. As it's easier to find the deals, it's also easier to find and build your team as well too. It's easier to get experience. It just funnels down the line. It's easier to build your team because your team is going to have an easier time building their experience as well too. It's a different level of skill working on a single family house as it is on a commercial building. There's different codes, different requirements, even to get drawings done, to get inspections, and there's just a whole level of complexity difference between commercial and residential. It's also easier to manage. When I say manage, I'm managing the property. And managing a single family house is much easier to do if you're in a sweat equity scenario where, hey, I'm going to do this myself. Caution, by the way. As opposed to you acquire a commercial building, there's a big difference there. You've got many more doors to handle, many more situations to handle, a lot more liability. And when it comes to tenants as well too, there's just two totally different games. And I'm seeing the ease of entry much greater in residential, and that's why I think it works good for investments. Smaller units means smaller mistakes too. My background is in construction engineering, and in construction engineering, in a commercial application, if you make one mistake, it's multiplied over how many square feet or how many units you have. In single family residential, we're much smaller, so our mistakes are going to be smaller too. And with the smaller mistakes, it's driven by smaller renovations. Our cost, again, the capital required to play the game is going to be less because the renovation is going to be smaller. The biggest renovation I've ever done on a flip project was $180,000. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of people who do more than that, but that was a big one for us. When I was working in a construction design build company, you know, our largest high-end renovations would be somewhere upwards of $500,000, and that's a lot. And if you look at $20,000, $30,000 on the commercial side per unit, and you've got 20 units, that can easily exceed $500,000. So residential is going to be less money to get in, and smaller renovations as well. Those smaller renovations are going to be quicker turns too. And when I say turns, it's from start to finish. When I acquire a property to when I'm collecting money on it. It's going to be a faster process. And finally, I feel that residential rental properties are a great stepping stone. Even if you want to look to build your portfolio into multifamilies, into mixed-use commercial, storage facilities, whatever, single-family rentals are a great stepping stone for you. All right, so let's look at some of the bad things, the cons. Let's look at the cons in these. Of course, we said that there's smaller capital required, probably less risk. All of that's going to yield smaller returns. So you're going to have to do more of them to get more return. We just think about it like this. If multifamily, so we got 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 units, was Costco, right? Our single family residentials are like the convenience mart you go to get a loaf of bread or something when you're running behind. Another downfall would be you have more roofs, you have more units, so you've got more roofs, you've got more yards, you've got more driveways, you've got more things to maintain. Depending on the commercial class that you are comparing this against, that may be a downfall to where I have 100 roofs instead of 3, right? I have 100 driveways instead of 3 parking lots, right? So there's more time to manage and take care of, maintain those pieces of the investment. And just because single family residential is easier to manage, you run the risk of self-management. And I will caution you on this. I say that that's a downfall of it. It's good to cut your teeth and learn, but when you try to save that 10%, 8%, whatever you may be getting, it's going to be hurting you in the long run, because I want you to develop a solution where this is passive. This is not another job for you. So it is a downfall where you can say, I can do this by myself. You are creating yourself another job, and the reality of it is you're actually buying yourself another job, and we don't want you to do that.